Good morning, everybody. Welcome on this gorgeous summer morning here to First Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco. I am Vanessa Southern. I'm the senior minister here, and I am joined with Carmen Barsody, who is our worship associate this morning. And really grateful to all the people who are here making worship possible, our sound team, some desired effects people who are going to be pinch hitting while Jonathan is on vacation, so we're super grateful to them for making this possible, and Shuli and Eric on camera, to our musicians, Richard Fay, who's our soloist today, and Ben Rudiak-Gould, who'll be helping us sing our hymns, and Bill Ganz accompanying, and to our building staff and our flower team, everybody, and to you for making it here on Sunday morning when our habits have been different for so long. So welcome. It's great to see you all. I like to think that life is not a circle and not a straight line, but often more like a spiral, that we find ourselves sometimes coming back to the same questions or themes, just the way we come back to birthdays and anniversaries in our lives and holidays and are asked to reconsider them. And so today's service is one that was one of the very first sermons, topics that I took on when I came here, because it's, to me, so central to what it means to be together as religious people in community, but also in the world. And there's this facet that I have been holding that feels like it's an expansion of that. And so I wanted to revisit it at this point in the year while I'm revisiting it. So welcome to a service on hospitality and welcoming in this spiral of conversations that we have in religious community. I also want to mention that I am going to be heading out directly after service to catch a flight, because my father has surgery and I need to make it to New York tonight. So I will bless all of us in the end of service, and then we'll not be able to greet after service. So just know I love you all, and I miss the chance to get to have coffee with you, and I will appreciate all of your thoughts and prayers for my family in the next few days, so thank you. Wonderful. So let's begin lighting this candle, this blue candle. Actually, this is one of many that we have burned down over the last 2.5 years, to welcome everybody who is with us here in person and here with us on live streams, so that we feel the presence of all of us here this morning together in worship. And in the spirit of joining together in the spirit of worship, let us, and by the way, everybody who has their masks off periodically during worship have all been antigen tested this morning, and we appreciate all of you keeping your masks on so everybody else feels safe and protected. I just wanted you to know we're taking that seriously. So our first hymn of the morning, let's rise as you're able in body and spirit and sing together hymn number 360. It's in the gray hymnal. It is Here We Have Gathered.
Together this our heart's own song. celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can, sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
Good morning. I invite you to join me in our prayer with the chalice lighting. It's found in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. If this is your first time watching, thank you for joining us. You can follow along in the order of service, which is available in the description of this video and is emailed to everyone who signs up for the newsletter, which you can get by filling out the Our Connections form, which is on the welcome table or through a link that is in the order of service and video description. The order of service also lists upcoming events and links to opportunities to connect with one another. To our live stream guests, if you have any issues, Joe Chapeau is monitoring the chat to help you out. Please note in the order of service chances to deepen your spiritual practices, engage in deeper study, and also put your values into practice through a variety of opportunities here at UUSF. I want to call your attention especially to the Auction Planning Committee, which is going to meet today, July 17th at 5 p.m. in the Stebbins Room and on Zoom. No experience is necessary. Save the date for the auction, Sunday, October 16th, 12:30 p.m. And this will be our first Auction Planning Committee meeting for this fall fundraiser. Our theme this year will be homecoming, as we are starting our journey back to an in-person congregation. Being on the Auction Committee is not only a great way to raise money for the church, it is also a lot of fun. There is also a program on the living wage this week, a need for folks at the Interfaith Food Pantry, and other opportunities all outlined in the order of service. Please take a look at your leisure. I believe this is all I want to call your attention to. So now I invite you to join me in our covenant, and then we will sing our doxology together. The covenant are the promises we make to each other, or some of them, as part of our commitment in this community. They are printed in the order of service. And together, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue. De todos bajo el gran sol surja esperanza, fe, amor, verdad y belleza, cantando de cada tierra, cada
Thank you so much. Thank you, Reiko. I forgot to mention you, but nobody forgets you. Reiko Odelaine, our magnificent organist, who's also blessing us this morning, as she does every week. Woo! The videos of Reiko definitely are our #1 hits on YouTube. So she's becoming a star in the YouTube world these days. I want to invite us into our ritual of remembrance and commitment, which we don't do every week anymore, but some weeks it feels important to step back into that ritual together. It felt that way for me. Recognizing that there's human suffering and struggle all over this world in the course of natural and human catastrophes. We ring our gong today in honor of two such places of suffering and struggle. First, we ring our gong for those lives who are in search of safety and a place to call home these days. All the places and ways that is happening in our world, for those who are held in federal custody in our detention camps for the crime of trying to enter this country, for the ongoing inhumanity experienced at our borders by people attempting to immigrate, but also for those who are refugees all over the world right now, those fleeing war in Ukraine or terrorism and violence like the people of Burkina Faso, those fleeing poverty, for all that separates us from one another in a long human history of xenophobia and racism and greed that is part of our nation's history, but not only ours. We ring our gong 7 times for this week of days, and for all those who are seeking a place to call home, a place where they find safety and a well-being that is protected and generous and permanent. And we ring our gong additionally once for the losses to COVID-19. This last week, 10,904 people died globally from the virus and its effects on their bodies, and 1,893 died in the United States alone. So we hold in our hearts all of those losses from this virus, but also all who are sick right now, and we also hold immense gratitude side by side for those we know, maybe ourselves, who have been sick and are recovered or recovering. For all these and all the places of struggle that tug at our own hearts or wake us up in the middle of the night, for all the human efforts around the world to ease the tide of suffering individually and collectively, may we join in that work, doing what we can, however we can, in this coming week. And so we ring our gong 8 times. I would like you to join me in a moment of reflection and meditation. Take a deep breath and let's reflect together on the experience of the stranger. I have been the stranger, and I imagine so have you. Walking into some room, knowing no one. Maybe it was this morning coming into this church. Maybe it was an office looking for a job. Maybe the first day of school, the playground the day after you moved, the 12-step meeting that would save your life. And maybe someone in that moment, if we were lucky, someone reached out. Was there someone? Someone who made those places a little safer? Months later, perhaps we'd walk into some of these same places with people to wave to and catch up with, and friendships starting to grow. And each of us would be making the other person's world a little larger, a little richer, a little dearer. Who welcomed us? Who made the world safer, new places warmer, Who assumed we would be worth their time before we had a chance to prove it? Because they were the kind of people who never needed or wanted proof. And who needs welcoming now? Or what part of us needs welcoming still? We give thanks for the love, wherever we found it in this life, that made a place for us. For the people who made the world safer and kinder. And for our chance to do the same. Amen. I want to say a couple words about the song that Richard is about to sing for us, that Bill is going to accompany. Whither Must I Wander? It's a Ralph Vaughan Williams composition, but the lyrics, the words, are from a Robert Louis Stevenson poem that is part of a collection of poems he wrote called Songs of Travel and Other Verses. And it seems to speak of one who is driven from his home and all that he loved by hunger or need, just like the refugees of our time. So it's perfect for this morning.
Home, no more home to me, whither must I wander? Hunger, my driver, I go where I must. Cold blows the winter wind over hill and heather. Thick drives the rain, and my roof is in the dust. Loved of wise men was the shade of my roof tree. The true words of welcome were spoken in the door. Dear days of old, with faces in the firelight, kind folks of old, you come again no more. Home now build then, my dear, full of kindly faces. Home was home then, my dear, happy for the child. Fire and the windows bright glittered on the moorland. Song, tuneful song, built a palace in the wild. Now when day dawns on the brow of the moorland, lone stands the house, and the chimney stone is cold. Lone let it stand now, the friends are all departed. The kind hearts, the true hearts that love the place of old. Spring shall come again, calling up the moorfowl. Spring shall bring the sun and rain, bring the bees and flowers. Red shall the heather bloom over hill and valley. Soft flow the stream through the even flowing hours. Fair the day shine as it shone on my childhood. Fair shine the day on the house with open door. Birds come and twitter there and twitter in the chimney, but I go forever and come again no more.
Welcome. Welcome is such a common word. Yet when I think about it, it's a very complex word. When Vanessa asked me to reflect on a time when I felt welcomed, no particular moment or person or place came to mind. As I asked myself the question, I noticed more that feelings were arising. This past year, I have become more painfully conscious of how I am more easily welcomed into spaces and conversations with less hesitancy, greater comfort, less question than my friends and colleagues who are Black, Filipina, gender fluid. I generally move through the world gliding through the invisible gates that keep many others out. I'm welcomed in this community. I'm welcomed by my family, welcomed by many friends. And I'm pretty certain about that welcome, as long as I behave with certain norms, as long as I know the spoken and unspoken rules, as long as I dress appropriately or don't bring up certain subjects, as long as I don't question too much or get angry or make someone feel uncomfortable. I move around in these familiar circles, generally feeling lovingly welcomed, while at the same time, I don't necessarily feel known. It takes time to get beyond the surface or generalities or assumptions people have of me. I have a whole world inside of me. I filter, I guard, I keep quiet. I behave according to the social norms expected of me and feel anxiety if too much of my humanness shows up ungroomed. There are so many complex layers of thoughts and feelings and experiences roaming around inside of me below the surface. Sometimes I struggle to welcome them myself, let alone reveal them for others to welcome. This past Friday was Sam Dennison's birthday. Sam and I live and work together at Faithful Fools. Sam decided to declare it a national holiday, so we took the day off. We spent a splendid day together with a variety of friends, some more familiar than others. As we walked and talked together and had spaces of wordless presence, I found myself relaxing. My buzzing brain slowed to more of a pleasant hum. I looked around me and took some deep breaths. The complexities of life began to feel a little less harsh. Though amongst some of our companions, there was visible trauma, both generational and more recent. And there was resiliency too. As I became more comfortable and present in the spaces, I looked around, extending my sight beyond the most immediate. I noticed an apparent messiness, a kind of unkeptness, yet it all seemed to be in a curious and natural and refreshing order. It all just was. No one present was having to filter or cover up or hold back. There were no pretenses or expectations to be anything we weren't. Vanessa's question was on my mind. Here I feel welcomed, I thought to myself, my messy, scattered, multi-layered, ungroomed, luscious human self. As we came to a close together, and Sam and I readied to take leave, and our feet hit the asphalt, I turned and I thanked the forest, the dried leaves and twigs, the trees that had burned in the 2020 fires, and the new redwoods that were taking root, the banana slugs and all the birds, the shy and the bold, the majestic and the straggly, the four-legged and the two-legged, all here together, unabashedly welcomed in the fullness of our natures.
And now our offering for the works and ministries of this community will be given and gratefully received. Baskets will go around, and if you're online, there's an opportunity to donate online. Just choose offering when you do so. Thank you in advance.
There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, the cattle are standing like statues. Oh, the cattle are standing like statues. They don't turn their heads as they see me ride by, and a little brown maverick is winking her eye. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. All the sounds of the earth are like music. All the sounds of the earth are like music. The breeze is so busy, it don't miss a tree. And an old weeping willow is laughing at me. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day. Oops.
Thank you. Our reading this morning is from a book called Radical Hospitality, and I love the word radical. At its root, it means at the root, which I think gives it this whole different notion of grounding at our roots, what it means to be hospitable. The authors write, Uncle Stan dies in Cleveland, and you find yourself sitting at a table with cousins you haven't seen in years and great uncles you did not even remember. The death is a sad thing, but there at the tables during lunch, you hear stories about your dad. You hear how your parents met. Someone remembers the time you visited Cousin Linda and cried to go home with your mother. But Linda is gracious enough not to mention you were a big, strong kid of 11 at the time. The table is a place where you connect and belong. It's a place where the past remains alive in the memory of the very old, and the future sparkles with possibility. It is enchanted. We lean close together, we share a glass, we tell a story. Through this simple human relating, the universe feels as though it is right again, even after Uncle Stan has gone on to whatever comes next. We all have memories of tables prepared for us by those who readied them for others. Some of the memories are from childhood. Others are memories of food friends, of falling in love, of deeply connecting with another human being. Meals are powerful symbols in our memories, but someone has to make a meal happen. Someone must consider it important enough to give themselves to the work that goes into the preparation. Setting a table and making it ready for a meal involves preliminary thought and consideration for others. To do it right, you have to think through your guests' preferences and history. You need to know if they have allergic or chronic illnesses. If you invite more than one guest, you must consider which of them would enjoy sitting together and how they might relate. Preparing for another pulls us out of ourselves. That's one of the good gifts of hospitality. Here ends our reading. The next solo that we're going to hear, Come Home Joe, is a song from the 1947 musical Allegro, which was the third collaboration between Oscar Hammerstein II and Richard Rodgers, after Oklahoma, which you just sang from, and Carousel. The setting for the musical is a man who goes to a big city to seek fame, but then life hands him some heartbreak. And he yearns to return home. And he heeds in this song a parent who reminds him of what welcome waits for him there.
We are the friends that you left behind. You need us, Joe, and we need you. We can bring happiness and peace to your mind. We want you, Joe, we want you to come. Come home. Come home, where the brown birds fly, to a pale blue sky, to a tall green tree. There is no finer sight for a man to see. Come home, Joe, come home. Come home and lie by a laughing spring, where the breezes sing and caress your ear. There is no sweeter sound for a man to hear. Come home, Joe, come home. You will find a world of honest friends who miss you. You will shake the hand of men whose hands are strong. And when all their wives and kids run up and kiss you, you will know that you are back where you belong. You'll know you're back where there's work to do, where there's love for you, for the love you give. There is no better life for a man to live. Come home, Joe, come home. Come home, son. Come home.
It's always this time of year that I particularly think about the summers that some of you have probably already heard too much about that I spent from the age of 9 onward at my aunt and uncle's home in upstate New York. I was their fresh air kid from New York City. They ran a bed and breakfast and a restaurant that overlooked Lake Cayuga. My aunt would see to most of the details of the menus and the front house management, you might say, and my uncle would run the business side, place the orders, fix the roof when lightning struck, which it seemed to, at least once a summer. Nancy, my aunt, was a natural at hospitality. Her mother had practiced it flawlessly, and so had her grandmother, it seemed. To the women in her family, setting a table and preparing a way for guests was an art. Everything was always beautifully laid out. And when you arrived, you felt welcomed like royalty, with huge smiles and hugs and a sense that they had waited and prepared for you all day, which of course they probably had. One afternoon, trying to show her all she had taught me, I laid out cups and saucers and spoons and napkins and freshly baked cookies. I hand-picked wildflowers from around the house, and I placed them on the table in the dining room, and I invited Nancy and my mother and my cousins. My mother was visiting us up in Ithaca that summer. And everyone appropriately oohed and awed about the table. And then someone asked for milk in their tea, which I had forgotten to put on the table, so I rushed over and put it out. A big plastic gallon jug. Vanessa! Nancy shrieked, have I taught you nothing? So I ran back and put it in the porcelain creamer and filled that with milk and rectified my wrong. Hospitality for Nancy was an art about details, about beauty, and about welcoming that was communicated not just in a table, but in a smile and all the attention to the person who came to that table. It was about time and space that was carved out and prepared to be present, fully present to another person and the specialness that you felt in their presence. The art that Nancy passed on, of course, that she felt is older than her mother and her grandmother. It's age-old, it's ages old. It has deep roots in many, many places, some of which I'm sure you all know about and have studied, including the Middle East, where our own Jewish and Christian heritage and teachings sprung up. When I first arrived here, the sermon I preached talked about some of that. About Bedouin culture, which I'd come to know about when I visited Abu Dhabi years ago when my father-in-law and mother-in-law were living there. In Bedouin culture, it is a tradition, a mandate that you welcome the stranger. Forbidden as you are when you welcome them from even asking their names, lest you find out they are an enemy or connected to one. And you're mandated to feed and house a guest for up to 3 days, even if you are heading away from the oasis and they are heading to it. And so depleting your resources puts you at danger. And as a symbol, but also a reality, there's always coffee on the fire, because that's the first thing you serve your guest. William Thesiger, who's a great British explorer who traveled across the deserts of Arabia, once saw, he reported, his Bedouin guides fall over themselves to welcome to their tent encampment a man in tattered clothing, and they showed this man incredible reverence, such that when the man finally left, Thesiger pulled aside the primary guide, Bin Kabina, who had been traveling with him for years, and asked him about this man and their treatment of him. The man, it turned out, was revered for his hospitality. Once he was one of the richest men in the tribe. Now he has nothing except a few goats. I asked, what happened to his camels? Did raiders take them, or did they die of disease? And Bin Kabina answered, no. His generosity ruined him. No one ever came to his tents, but he killed a camel to feed them. By God, he is generous. I could hear the envy in his voice, Thesiger said. Imagine generosity and hospitality to the point of ruin, and people who revere you for it. That is the world that helped shape our own. The word guest has as its root a word that means spirit. Hence the connection, also ancient across many cultures, that when you're entertaining guests, you and I, strangers, we have to be aware that we are entertaining spirits, the origins and power of which we cannot know in the moment. The stories of entertaining angels unaware in Greek and Hebrew scriptures. We value hospitality. We have inherited, those of us who come out of the Judeo-Christian culture, or one of the many influenced by it, or Bedouin and Middle Eastern culture. Even in India, there's a saying, the guest is God. So many cultures pass on to us this radical sense of the grounding importance of hospitality. Even in our own denomination, years ago, the program that was created to prepare us to be more welcoming, decades ago, to be more welcoming to people who were gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, recalled us to this age-old ethic, calling the program the welcoming congregation, because who would want to be anything but welcoming? Already, of course, it's clear that hospitality is more than the setting of a table. But that's part of what runs through our veins. Hospitality is what we do to prepare for the guest, to welcome them. It's food, of course, it's food. It's feeding their bodies and making sure their needs are taken care of, but it's the welcome at the door, and it's even more than that. Father Daniel Homan, the Benedictine monk that we read from this morning, he is a member of the rule of Benedict, people who live by it, rules set by Benedict himself, of course, who made welcoming the stranger a mandate among the brothers who would agree to be in community together. Something to keep them open to the world, he hoped, and to work at that welcoming and all that would require of them in their formation. At Father Homan's monastery in Oxford, Michigan, they had lived apparently a little too cloistered for decades. So one year, they welcomed back a brother who had done work in youth ministry in Chicago and who proposed to them that they turn an old barn that was on the property into a center for youth. It was 1975, and the barn was old, and it had no infrastructure, and turning it into a place that could welcome youth, where they could come for retreats, it meant a lot of changes and sacrifices just right there. First, the barn had to be made hospitable with things like showers and bathrooms and appropriate room for sleeping. And just as challenging was that these monks, who were for the most part self-proclaimed introverts, had to prepare to welcome youth. Hardwired at this stage, often it seems, for a little more extroversion and connection. They had to prepare to share meals with them. They had to be prepared to have them present on the grounds, breaking the silence with sounds of laughter and conversation, and open to the struggles that these youth would bring with them to this place. Benedict knew that when you prepare a place for people at your table, even just that begins to change you. Then, when you sit and eat with them again, you are changed. He was right, and the monks in the Oxford monastery were about to be changed. It's always easier to care for the world, to care for all the others, writes Homan and his co-author, an active laywoman who serves in the monastery too. It's always easier to care for the world, to care for all the others from a distance. We can even feel good about our prayers for them as long as the people are not in our space and not taking up emotional space in our hearts. They become harder to handle when they show up and expect something from us. But they did show up. By 2002, 80,000 youth had crossed through the gates into the monastery. There they had been welcomed, tended to, and listened to in the way that the monks were trained to be in attentive, present listening, to see and attend to the divinity in each of the children, each of the youth in front of them. So it isn't surprising that some of the youth would show up on the grounds during times of trouble, with households exploding beneath them. Not long ago, the monks recalled, we found a young woman in the chapel who had been on retreat in the monastery during her teens. It turned out that she had gone into the dark, empty retreat house the night before and slept. Like many adults, she had gone home for the holidays, but the difference with her was that her mother didn't want her home, not like the parent in the song. Over the years, she told them, unbeknownst to the monks, this young girl would come and sit by the rocks, by the gate to the entrance of the grounds when things got bad. So when things fell apart, she went to the only place she knew would welcome her. Other youth returned to have their weddings performed by the fathers and later have their babies blessed. Looking for cloistered lives, these fathers opened up the monastery to a world of turmoil and searching and beauty and deep connection. All of it took hold of them. 80,000 lives invited to change their own. Father Homan writes, merely being nice to people, it does not fulfill the deep requirements of Benedictine hospitality. We must let the person stir us. We must connect. Benedictine hospitality will extract a cost from us, and it will tumble us into the magical realm of personal transformation. I think mistakenly sometimes we think otherwise. Maybe lazy in our understanding of hospitality, we assume that if we warmly welcome someone, doing our job as a good host at the door, that their job as guest is to become one of us, or easy for us to accept or feel connected to. Their job is to figure out how to say the right things, wear the right clothes, not upset us. Except for minor tinkering, they're supposed to leave behind what pieces of them don't fit the mold that we have made. In our family, in our church, in our city, in our nation. I'll admit I'm guilty of that sometimes. When new people arrive in my church asking for change, I can sometimes feel my first reaction is a defensiveness or a protectiveness of who and what I think we are. And I want to be fair too. I think there is this thing called conditional love in the world, where people can come at us and say, unless you change, unless you're what I want you to be, you are not lovable. And I think whenever that shows up, wherever it shows up, it's something we should be nervous about, because we just are lovable. And then we can be invited into conversations about transformation to be better together, feel more connected to ourselves and each other. So there's some place in between this sense of welcoming the guest to change themselves or leave behind the parts of themselves that don't fit, and us changing who we are at the whims of anybody who comes in the door. Something in between there that is in this work of hospitality that we're talking about. Something that this Bedouin rite of welcoming the stranger and the Benedictine rule and so much else is pushing us into. Father Homan and Lonnie Pratt write about hospitality. To do it right, you have to think about your guests' preferences and history. I think they're speaking literally about what foods to serve, but also metaphorically, right? To welcome a guest is to try and understand, to listen to where they've been and figure out how together you can serve one another's healing and fruitfulness and fuller life. To do that, it means, of course, we're not just making a meal, but we're meeting a person in a way that orients our heart to be ready to say, I am open to you, and that you might change me, might show me where and how I need to be changed, to be more loving, to be more welcoming and embracing, because you matter to me, which, of course, we do matter to one another. In our tradition, we believe in the worth and dignity of all people. We assign worth and dignity to all people. We see the holiness in them, and we expect them to change us. I hadn't really thought so much the last time I preached about welcoming, about this transformational piece of what it asks of us. But I think it's key and timely, and I find myself circling around it. As we Unitarian Universalists, we members of the First U Society of San Francisco, we who live in and help shape this nation are needing to grapple again with what it means to be hospitable and truly welcoming, in the fullest spiritual sense of that, in the institutional change that's required of that. To be welcoming of a more expansive notion of gender, for example. To be changed by a world that is not majority white and that does not put whiteness at the center of all the norms, but invites the norms to be shaped and defined by everyone who brings their full selves and is invited to bring their full selves into the conversation, into the messiness that Carmen talked about that's present and hard and beautiful and gorgeous when we do that. Welcoming in that sense is something that's so important that it clearly means giving up the comfort of avoiding what feels complicated or confusing, because it's so important for us to figure out how to be better as a nation and a city and a church and a family. And the only way there is to get into the messy, hurting, hard parts together. That, after all, is what those monks in that monastery in Oxford, Michigan did, the one that had more capacity for love than it thought it did. And the fruits of their wading into that world, defined also by the youth who they welcomed in, was both the struggles they let in, but also the laughter, and how the stranger became a beloved extended member of the family, whose weddings they danced at and babies they blessed, who showed up in the middle of the night because they needed someone who they knew would love them back into wholeness and healing. Spirit entered with each guest, as that word implies it will, to blow the place open to bigger love. So it's what I find myself thinking about this summer again, what it means to live that ethic of hospitality. The one I learned in part at the table set by an aunt, but I learn more deeply each time we're challenged to ask what it means to be welcoming to whoever might show up at our doors. So pour that coffee, brothers and sisters and siblings, remembering that man in the desert who gave everything to welcome each stranger that showed up at his tent encampment. Pour milk in the creamer and call to mind those who taught you how to welcome and love this way, this intimate breaking of bread, journeying shoulder to shoulder way. And may we all go to the doors we stand by wherever we do, whenever and wherever we are the ones, and open the way, and open spirit in its wild transformation to larger life as we do so. Blessings to us all, and amen. This service, we're going to sing together our closing hymn. It's number 407 in your gray hymnal. We're going to sit at the welcome table. Let's rise in body or spirit and sing together.
gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people around that table. All kinds of people around that table one of these days, hallelujah. All kinds of people around that table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. No fancy style at the welcome table. No fancy style at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. No fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days.
And now, in our comings and our goings, may the light of love shine upon us. Out from within us, be gracious unto us and grant us peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen.